morning and welcome to AIADA's AutoTalk. I am Dan Barson, your host for today's program. Before I introduce this morning's presenter, let's cover a few administrative items. First, we'll repeat today's session and program at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you have anybody at your dealership or organization that you would like to listen in live, please have them join us again at 4 p.m. Everyone that registers will receive a copy of today's program with Doug's contact information. And finally, please stay on the line after the program for a few important announcements. Today's presenter has over 30 years' experience in the automotive industry. And let me just start by saying this. He started as a lot boy at a Ford store in Louisville, Kentucky in 1976. He has worked in retail, in various technology positions, training, analytical, and a lot of leadership positions with some of our leading automotive companies. You might have seen Doug recently. He's a regular presenter at Digital Dealer, NADA Convention, Auto Remarketing, and a number of other state association meetings. Please welcome my good friend, ADESA Senior Director, Dealer Services, Doug Haddon. Doug, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Dan. And thanks for reminding me how old I am. I really appreciate that early here on the West Coast.
You're welcome.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate you being here. We got a ton of stuff to cover. Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about used cars. And since we have so much to cover, I'm just going to jump right in. One thing I do want to mention is, as Dan said, I have been in this industry forever. It's all I know. I have sold and bought cars wholesale. I have sold cars retail for many years. So I know that, you hear a lot of smart folks on WebExes and presentations and things, but I've actually been in this forever. I've done most of it myself personally, so I get a real good feel for it, just so you know where I'm coming from. All right, let's jump in and get going. So today we're talking about where have all the used cars gone. It's always been a problem to find the right used cars for your lot. It's always been a struggle. For years it's been that way. But there's some things that have changed recently, and you can see that bottom tagline. If you're not online, you're going to get left behind. Our industry changes almost daily now. You never know what you're going to read on the headlines. But as we all know, online, not only for your retail customers, but for you as a dealer or a manager, in order to more accurately find and acquire the right vehicles, you're going to need to be online. So let's get started. So first thing we're going to talk about, the factory captive wholesale websites. We'll talk about that briefly, some important things there I want to hit on. All makes and models before they go to auction. Again, you guys know how old I am. I've been doing this for a long time. Back in the day, I used to have to go to the banker and take him to lunch a lot so I could make sure I get a look at those cars prior to going to auction. Well, that's one of the main things that have changed, and the internet's taking care of that, and we're going to talk about how you can get those cars before they go to auction. And then digitally offered fresh trades. What the heck does that mean? Well, you'll find out. It means you'd be able to get a fresh trade while it's still sitting in the appraisal lot. Stop, start, and steer. That's where we're going to spend most of our time. We're going to talk about how do I get those more inexpensive vehicles, and how do I get them on my lot and make money. So let's talk about factory wholesale websites first. You know what these are. It's the AIADA, so I went through some of these. Toyota Dealer Direct, Honda VIPs, Hyundai Direct, and of course there's Kia Direct as well. What are these websites for, really? Well, the first thing you use it for is lease grounding. So customer leases a car from you or leases a car from another like manufacturer lot. They come back at end of term and drop that vehicle off. So you use those websites for grounding. And of course, you can also use that same website for purchasing those vehicles. Your car comes in. I mean, what a great deal it is when a customer that you leased a car to brings that vehicle back, and and hopefully you've done all your correct activities and they buy or lease another car from you directly. But having that vehicle there, it's a vehicle you sold, you serviced, and now it's back on your lot. What a great story that is when you put that car out on the used car lot. Yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Jones bought this car from us 36 months ago. They've had it serviced 5 times. They loved it so much, they just leased a brand new one just like it. I mean, great story as you could tell on those vehicles. And then purchase grounded vehicles from other stores. Those first two bullet points, everybody's pretty aware of. But as I travel the country and I visit dealers all over the country, I notice, when that vehicle is grounded at your lot, most dealers have an inventory management system, and they're really doing the analytics, and they know what cars work for them. They also know what new cars are on their lot. So there's a chance that grounded vehicle may not work for them. It could be, I've got too many light vehicles that in stock already, even though they're pretty good turners, that'll overstock me. Or maybe there's something going on in the new car lineup that particular model and variation, there's some kind of incentives going on with the new vehicles that doesn't make that as attractive to have in your used car lot. But think about it. When you're on that website, whether it's Phipps or Toyota Direct, whatever it is, you can see all those vehicles that other folks passed on. Now, it used to be, well, if they passed on it, it must be a bad car. Well, hang on a second. We just talked about the inventory management system. It's not necessarily a bad car. It might be a bad car for that lot where it was grounded, and it might be a great car for you. So you need to really make sure that when you're going through and looking at those vehicles, don't think that they're bad cars. I mean, you get the CR and you get all that stuff. And by the way, any of these online upstreams, you have more protection. So I would look and make sure that car, if it fits your inventory management system, says, hey, that's a good car for you, take a good look at those cars. They're grounded at other dealers' lots. You're literally taking cars from your competition and bringing them to your store and making money. So take a good look at those vehicles. Don't pass on them until you think they're bad. So what are some of the benefits from using your factory website? First of all, lower buy fees. Some are as low as $0. So if you have a used car manager or you're the used car manager, you got to weigh you go to the auction. How far is it to the auction? How long does it take you to get there? Yeah, you might be a little distracted because, they have the best breakfast burrito in town, whatever it is. But you think you're getting great deals at the auction, the physical auction. Now, trust me, I work for a physical auction. I want you to go, but I'm trying to help you be efficient. So you have lower buy fees. You don't have that travel and that time. You have better protection. You get better vehicles because these vehicles were just lease grounded. And that leaves happier customers because everybody wants a one owner, low mileage, off lease car. So you have this available to you. Every manufacturer has it. The captive has it. You have access to it. If you're not familiar with it, make sure you get familiar with it. A lot of opportunity there. And one thing I do notice too as I travel the country, I was just speaking at Digital Dealer in Orlando. You would be surprised the amount of BDC managers that actually are tasked with grounding vehicles. And I mean they're typically fairly computer literate, right? They're computer friendly, so that's probably not a bad choice. But the problem is, are they looking at those vehicles? Are they running them through your inventory management system? Are they saying, hey boss, these 5 cars are the ones you need to buy? Are they taking them to the used car manager or whoever's in charge of buying used cars? So if you've got the BDC guy looking at your doing your grounded vehicles, I'd flip that around. I'd get my used car manager, who's ever in charge of actually purchasing those used cars, I'd put them in charge of grounding the vehicle. It was amazing to me how many guys raised their hand that had BDC folks running their factory website when it comes to wholesale. All makes. Again, let's go back. I call this the first open opportunity. So those vehicles, they were grounded at your dealership. They were there on your lot. You had a chance to get them. If you didn't buy them, everybody in your franchise make had the opportunity to buy them. And then before they leave the lot, before they leave your lot, they're back up online for sale to anybody. And I mean anybody with a wholesale license that can qualify to buy on an online auction, they have the first opportunity to buy that car off your lot. So if you passed on it because it didn't fit your inventory management, the dealers in your franchise didn't buy it, it goes first opportunity, open sale to everybody with a wholesale license. That's all it takes to buy those vehicles. And again, it's all makes and all models. What are the benefits of those vehicles? They're the same. They're lower buy fees, better protection, they're better vehicles, you get happier customers. Now, why is this first open so important? Well, here's what I see. I see a lot of folks that are non-franchise take advantage of this. So why aren't the franchise folks taking advantage of this? And just for grins, here's a couple of big players. How about off-lease only? These guys have thousands and thousands of these off-lease cars, and they all buy on that first open opportunity. Even wholesalers. These guys, I think these guys are out of Tennessee or something. They literally buy hundreds and hundreds of these cars a week, take them out, get them dressed up, put good tires on them if they need it. They make them CPO eligible, and they run them right back to the auction, and you never believe who buys them. Yes, the dealer that typically had the chance to buy that car earlier upstream. Maybe it was even grounded on their lot and they end up buying the car back through the auction because now it's pretty. All they do is detail it, change the oil, but who knows what kind of oil they put in, who knows, the tire, all that stuff. It's not what you would do to the vehicle, right? So why pay somebody else to clean the car up when you had first opportunity to buy that vehicle? Super important. All right, digitally fresh trades. I want to spend a few minutes here. When this first came out, probably been about 2 years ago, I was just amazed by it. Think this through for a second. You're taking a vehicle in on trade, and we all know that we are pretty good at data now. So we know if it's a high performer on my used car lot, I'll sell it faster for higher gross profits than the average turn in my store. Or it might even say, hey, this vehicle you're trying to take in trade does not do well here at the store. You always end up keeping them forever. You don't make a lot of money. Or it might say it does well in the marketplace. But what it doesn't do, it doesn't say, I will give you X amount of money for this trade. Now you can be taking a car in trade, snap a few photos, and get a bid right then and there on that car. Now, let me run that by again. You were taking it in trade. You were appraising that vehicle. I call it bid at appraisal. You're literally getting buying and selling vehicles at the time of the appraisal. So when you're appraising a vehicle, you can sell it. As a buyer, when you're looking at vehicles, you can buy a vehicle that's sitting on their appraisal lot. And the funds and title are guaranteed. This is a true auction. These are as fresh as you can get when it comes to fresh trades. So if you're a seller, think about that for a second. I'm looking at this vehicle. Inventory management says it's probably not the best vehicle for me in my market or my store. A few clicks of pictures and a few clicks of condition, and you start to get bids on that vehicle. So, yeah, I know there's title issues and things that take place, but if you did have the title on that trade and you did do a bid at appraisal auction, you could literally have somebody pick that car up the same day you take it in trade. What would that do to your average turn time for your used car inventory? It's amazing. It gives you more cars to choose from. Not again, with everybody using inventory management, they don't keep every car. Even the $8,000 to $10,000 cars that everybody's looking for, this is where you're going to find them because they don't always fit in everybody's inventory. If it doesn't fit, they're not gonna try it out. They're gonna sell it right away. So as a buyer, you'll have definitely more cars to choose from, and they'll be as fresh as possible. Again, these things are typically, you can do them on the app. They're all handheld apps now. You can also keep track of stuff online. At your desktop, while you're sitting there appraising that trade, you'll get notifications you have a bid. These auctions typically last less than an hour. So by the time you get your deal done, retail, you'll know exactly where you're at with that trade. And if you want, you can push the sold button, and you've got a sold vehicle before the end of the day you took in the trade. I just think that's amazing. And what that does for inventory turn is fantastic. Here's where we want to spend the majority of our time, because there's a lot to talk about in the old stop, start, and steer. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. You've got to define what that really means to you. Now, we know there's a lot of folks out there that can't afford a $30,000, $40,000 new vehicle. And what I really want you to remember is this. When we go out and we appraise a car, or we go out and we look at a car on our used car lot, as dealers and managers, I don't know when the last time you actually drove your used car lot and actually walked out and drove some of your cars on your used car lot, but I think that's a good thing to do every now and then. Just walk out, jump in the car, take it for a drive, because here's why. When you drive that car, you're going to say to yourself, gosh, this thing feels loose, or the seat's not as comfortable as it should be. The cushion's kind of worn out. I don't know why I'm selling this car. Now think about it for a second. What kind of cars do we usually drive? Our cars are fairly late model, typically. There's not many demos left, but some of us still have demos. But those $8,000 to $10,000 cars, or even less, those folks aren't looking for that. They're not used to that. They're not expecting that, their expectation levels are a little bit lower. So when it comes to the stop, start, and steer, I mean, these cars could be $3,000 cars. Put your expectation level down a little bit, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It may not be a car that you would drive, but there's folks out there that need vehicles. That's why used car lots sell so many cars, because people have this expectation of, hey, I need a used car, I just need something to drive. They don't come see us at the new car franchise, they go to the used car dealer. It's time for us to have those folks come see us, right? Stop, start, and steer. First thing, the car's got to be safe. I mean, that's the no-brainer that goes without saying. You need to be able to have that vehicle out there and not have any liability worries about it. Again, no-brainer. You need something that's dependable. Now, especially here at AIADA, you guys sell probably the most dependable vehicles on the face of the earth. The imports have always been known to have better history when it comes to dependability, that they last longer. I mean, I've got a buddy of mine that runs an independent repair shop. He has 4 of them actually now. And I asked him, I said, hey, when was the last time you put a set of wheel bearings in a Toyota? He couldn't even remember. He goes, this guy's had his business for 15, 20 years. He doesn't even remember the last time he ordered a set of wheel bearings for a Toyota. I mean, they just last a lot longer. So when that car has 120,000 miles on it, it still can be a dependable car. So they do have to be dependable, and I think you guys AIADA members are way ahead on that. And the car has to have some value. Now, like I was talking about earlier, does it have the same value to you as it would a buyer that's looking for a $5,000, $6,000 car? Again, remember, their value to them is that car is going to get them back and forth to work, it's going to get them back and forth to the babysitter, whatever, daycare, whatever it is. That's a lot of value to them. So car has to be valuable, but it's got to be valuable to the customer. And then here's where I want to spend a few minutes. So again, I get to travel the country. I love what I get to do. I get to travel the country. I get to see what dealers are doing. I get to see what dealers are doing that works. I get to see what dealers are doing that may not work so good. And one of the things I've noticed across the country is the move. Now, I know, especially if you're a dealer on this call, you're probably not going to like this much, but I'm going to challenge you to do a little bit of homework and do a little bit of math. It's always been, as a used car manager, that battle of, well, I got to run my car through the shop. They charge me double retail. They take forever. And we all know with all the new systems that are out there, there's even dedicated software that's designed to help you get that car from trade or auction to the front line faster. So it's more money. The used car manager has to pay more money to the shop, and it usually takes a little bit longer to get the car ready. So right there, those two things, and I know as a dealer, it's like, I want all that money. I want the shop tickets, I want the labor, and I want the markup on the parts. So let's think about this for a minute. I get that, right? I want to put as much money in my shop and my service department as possible, and my parts department. But how much time and effort does your parts department take getting your non-franchise brand parts? So they got to go to wherever they go. They go to Napa or they go to the other dealership franchise to pick up those parts. How much time and effort does that take? And is the markup as good as the markup you have on your parts that you stock for your franchise? Probably not. It's probably close. I don't know how you do it. Depends. But how much effort and time is spent just gathering the right parts for that non-brand vehicle? Or if you're a Toyota store, you might be working on a Ford. And then think about it too is a lot of us don't really have, as we try to maximize our labor hours, a lot of us don't have a dedicated used car mechanic. Those vehicles are just kind of spread around the shop. And I hate to say it, but I just speak in what really I see happening. And literally, it typically ends up being that guy that doesn't have a lot of work. They usually give him the used car and let him work on it. And maybe, I keep going back, if it's a Honda store, the brakes, the fluid changes, the valve cover gasket leaks, all those things, if that Honda technician had a Honda, he could knock it out way under the time the book calls for when it comes to labor hours. But can he do the same thing on a Ford? Can a Honda tech do the same thing on a Ford? Can they do it with the speed and accuracy? So here's what I'm getting at. I know we want to keep all the money in the store, but what I've been seeing is even some of these larger groups of 10, 20 plus stores have moved to letting their used car managers get those vehicles done outside their shop. And here's what I found. I found that the turn is much faster. The expense, the dollar amount is obviously way less. And there's a few of these non-franchise independent repair shops, some of these big box store types like the Pet Boys and so forth of the world, and some of the Napa franchises that have auto repair. They actually offer deals to dealers to have their used cars recon through their shop. Two things. Typically, they have parts in stock because it's all typically quick service parts. They have those things in stock, so nobody's calling around trying to find parts. And these are true, what I like to call used car mechanics. The majority of them these days are NACE certified. They have the certification. These aren't backyard guys. These guys are actually certified. They have the right tools. But they've done 2 or 3 Fords. They've done 4 or 5 Chevys. They've done 3 or 4 Hondas that day. So these guys, their job is to get those cars in and out and keep them safe. And take this one step further. Obviously you can't send a used car out that's not done correctly, because what you don't want it coming back into your shop. But let's say something happens that these folks that bought your $8,000 trade-in or $8,000 vehicle you got at the auction, they buy the vehicle, they've had it for 2 or 3 months, they're on vacation out of state, and there's a problem. A lot of these shops have national recognition, so you'd be able to send them to the local, call it Pep Boys, I'm just using that as an example, to have a warranty repair done. See, that makes a happier customer. And frankly, even if they're in town, by your dealership, and there's an issue, you don't have to have that customer back in the service drive if you don't want to. You can send them directly to that shop. So there's a lot of value in those things. It's how much time and effort goes into acquiring the correct parts for your used vehicle, non-brand vehicles, how well versed your techs are on those vehicles, and how much time it takes to actually get those vehicles to the front line. I've seen some of these larger groups, they're actually buying vehicles at auction and taking advantage of some of the reconditioning that can be done at auction, and then shipping them directly to their third-party vendor to get the cars teched up and stop, start, and steer safe. So a lot to think about on that one. Again, I just challenge you to do the math. Look how long it's taking you to get those vehicles through your shop that are non-brand vehicles, and look at the effort that it takes. And then you might want to weigh out the money on that. So again, I would say that with the stop, start, and steer, just to recap it, these important things, get out there and drive the cars every now and then and see what's happening with those. Get a feel for them, right? You want to make sure they're safe, dependable. You want to make sure that vehicle has value to the buyer. Remember, that's the big thing that kills a lot of these cars that might make it through your shop if they're looked at properly. That value thing. It's value to your customer, not what you think the value of that vehicle is when retail, when somebody's looking at it. Not what the value is, what the used car manager thinks, or the shop manager, because they're not buying the car. It's that customer that needs an inexpensive vehicle that stops, starts, and steers, it's safe and dependable. The value to them is going to be more than you think. So take a look at what you're appraising those vehicles for. Take a look at what you can buy those vehicles for. That $8,000 car, that might be a $9,000 vehicle that you might have paid $9,000, but that might be a $10,000 value to the person that wants it, or even back that up even further. The $3,000 trade-in, that might be a $5,000 vehicle or $6,000 vehicle value-wise to the retail buyer that needs a car to get back and forth to work. That's the big thing. And then again, walk through your shop, see what they're doing, talk to your service manager, ask him about how long it's taking to get those cars through the shop, not just on average, but do the guys struggle a little bit? Do the techs struggle a little bit with Fords? Do they struggle a little bit with a Chevy? Is there something you can do to speed the process up? And if it's sending it to a third-party shop, then that's, look at the money, look at the time, you're going to have to make that decision. But I have seen, again, I travel the country, I see what works, what doesn't work. There's a lot of folks making this work.
Okay, Doug, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Some great ideas. Really appreciate your time. Watch for our next session on Tuesday, May 22nd, when our guest will be Kendall Billman of Auto Alert. We'll be looking at how to leverage your own customer database to maximize sales opportunities and profits. Data mining what you already have in your systems can really pay some big dividends. Please stay informed. There's a lot of action going on here in Washington, D.C., and I think the key thing here is stay informed as negotiations continue around NAFTA and trade. The trade issue is a big one. It impacts our industry greatly, and just make sure you're staying informed and involved. If you would like to host a visit by your member of Congress, please feel free, give us a call here at 1-800-GO-AIADA. We have staff that can help you do that and show the benefits that our franchise dealers provide to our communities, our customers, and our employees. The average dealership employs roughly 70 folks and is a real big contributor to their local community. Again, thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of the month, and if you have any questions or concerns, please give us a call here at the association. Thank you.